Hello and welcome to my video 2.2 on estimating. So let's take a closer look at these questions. Basically, estimating is all about making it easier. So this is slightly different than rounding. Rounding is always going to be a very step-by-step logical process. Estimating can have some differences. Different people might estimate in different ways. So, for example, if you're rounding, you always round, let's say it says, well, first of all, if it's rounding, then it will tell you exactly what to round to. So it'll say, round to the nearest 100,000. Well, if that's the case, you know that this would round to 400,000. Okay? Or it'll tell you round to the nearest 100,000. So this would then be a very different number at 380,000, right? So depending on what it says, rounding would be different. Estimating is a very broad, general term. Let's just make my pen a little bit thinner. Estimating is a very broad, general term, so it allows for a little bit of flexibility. Not craziness, but flexibility. So it allows you to decide what you think is easy to work with. So in this top case, I would say, yeah, may as well make it as easy as possible. Let's round this to 400,000. And let's round this to 700,000. Now, what it doesn't mean is that you can just ignore the laws or the rules of rounding and say, oh, I just want to round this one not to 7 but to 6, or I don't want to go to 7, I want to go to 8. Well, those don't make sense because you are rounding in this case. You're just the one that's deciding what to round to, and in this case you're looking at this 1, and since it's less than 5, it has to round down. So this should be 700,000. Okay? And then you can make sure that you keep all the digits in the right place. So this is one way of looking at this. I'm just going to maybe just write this out a little bit neater. This is one way of looking at it, but I actually don't like how that looks because it's hard to remember place values. So you can find the answer like that. That's perfectly fine. But if you want to, if it helps, you can write out the number this way. For me, if I were to get stuck or if I were having troubles, this is how I would do it. Because you can more easily look down the rows. This goes to 0. 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 And now we add the last two, so that would be 11. So it's really important that you're being very careful about how many zeros you have, and make sure you're actually estimating the right number, because this is a perfectly valid answer. But what wouldn't be is if you had one less zero. So let's say 4 zeros, because you just missed one, you forgot about it. I mean, it's a perfectly normal mistake, but it would not be okay because it's so far different from the actual answer. Okay, so those are some of the generals, and that's with addition, but the same rules apply with subtraction, so let's just show this quickly. I would say probably round the first one to million. Now again, you're watching all your zeros very carefully, and you can round to a different number, but this is how I would round to. And also it's nice to keep, to write like this, where we have in groups of 3, because of our last video about place value and talking about how it always goes in groups of 3, where it's ones, tens, hundreds, ones, tens, hundreds. Even though it's 1,000s, 10,000s, and 100,000s, it's still always groups of 3. So anyways, I'd keep it in groups of 3. It makes counting your zeros a lot easier. So for example, this is not so nice. Let's rewrite that out so it makes it more obvious. Okay? Now you can see, well, I have, basically I'm taking 10 and I'm subtracting 4, and I'd be left with 600,000. Again, if you're having trouble, I would go up and down like this and keep more track of the digits. Looking at this one, we've got multiplication. Remember, that's what this dot means. So let's go down like this and round this one to any number that makes more sense or is a little bit easier to work with. So this would be, I would do to 500. If you do to 480, that's fine. It's just harder to work with in this case. So just stick with something that's easy. That's the goal. Try to make it easy on yourself. Try to be lazy. It's the only time I'm going to tell you that. Okay, so 500 times 500. Well, here's a little bit of a trick. So I would count all your zeros first. So I've got 4 zeros. So let's put those down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then do your numbers. So maybe even cross out those 4 that you just used. So now all I'm left with is 5 times 5. Then I write down the 25. So I've got 250,000. And then, so just the zeros at the end. Okay? Hopefully that helps. And here's the last one. Remember, you're trying to make it as easy as possible. So this is where it's really tricky in the division type questions. Okay? You can round and it'll do one thing, but if you estimate, you can actually make it easier on yourself. And this is where knowing your times tables inside and out can really benefit. So in this case, easy round, I would round to 80. And what I would say is that you're trying to think of what's a number that can be divided by 8 easily. Well, 8 can be divided by 8. Can this number look like 8 at all? Not really. Okay, what about 16? Well, maybe it's close-ish to 16. Maybe I can go 1,600, but that's pretty far off. Let's try the next one. Not 16, what's the next one? 24. Well, actually, this number is very close to 24. So that's actually going to lead us into our next topic as well. Sorry, my pen is leaving a lot of trails here. But see, now, if you remember that 24 can divide... Wow, that's looking pretty weird. 24 can divide evenly by 8. Then, this is now a more simple situation. So, let's simplify this even more, because there's a lot of zeros that some people find scary. Wow, so many dots. If we simplify this again, what we can do is we can get rid of 1 0 on each side. So 240 divided by 8. So now we're even closer. And if we just look at the 24, it would be 3. But because there's an extra 0, it's going to be 30. Wow, sorry guys, most of my videos don't look quite this messy. And so, because we have this extra 0, that adds on to the back here. Okay? So, I hope this video helps you guys with the estimating. And I hope that it clears things up for you guys. And good luck.